Okay, what we have here is the two polecats. We have the standard size, which is the red webbing one, and then the small version, which is the yellow webbing one. The standard size is designed to fit poles from 180mm to 450mm, and the smaller size is to go from 125 up to 285. This is to cover the range of different poles in the fleet. We've got one that's got slightly more adjustable in there, and I'll go through that in just a little while. What we're going to look at here is the pre-use inspection prior to use, the things to look for and the things we need to see. So coming up initially, if we look at it, obviously is a visual inspection. The belt itself, is it whole, is it complete, is there any glaring examples of cuts or damage or abrasion to it? Key point indicators that we look for is the adjustability in the device. When we pull through, does it lock in place? When we come to adjust it, does it open out? Carabiners, are they operative in a three-stage manner? Do they lock back and the gate close by itself? Check on the other side, same process. Does the gate open? Does it close and lock by itself? And a key one in this aspect here is this little fall arrestor shock absorber. Does it show a white label in this point here which says do not use? That will indicate that the belt has experienced a fall and is not suitable to use. We move on then through to the snap hook, checking that it works. Again, as with the other process, is it a double action to move? Single action is not allowed, must lock in by itself. Checking the orientation. We then check through the belt itself, looking for cuts, abrasion, any damage which might indicate that it's been taken a fall or exposed to chemicals. As you can see on here, it does have a little bit of use onto it, so we've got some creosote, and one of the key things to look at is the tread on the grip section to make sure that it's complete. This is very much like the tread of your tyres on your cars, and you need to look through. If you can see, we have a small white stitch pattern based in here. This is where the eye scaff goes, and the stitch runs all the way along the edge of the rubber section on both parts. If your rubber has worn down to that stitch part, that's the point where we recommend you take the belt out of service. We have tested it in a test laboratory on a dry pole, and it does grip and perform. However, if you're on a pole that's wet or greasy or mossy, that may not stop as it should do. So therefore we say when the wear gets down to that point, that's the time to take the belt out of service. Predominantly you'll wear on the top and the bottom of the rubber sections, not the central part. These are the points that are in contact with the pole when you're climbing and when you're descending. So these are your wear points you will get. So don't think that because you've got a great section in the middle that it's fine, but it's almost bald on these sections. These are the points to look for, and those are your main points of wear. Exactly the same process works with a small belt. We check through to make sure it's whole and complete. We check the adjustability on the belts. The difference with this one, as you can quite see, is that the rope rat adjustable side is a lot shorter. This is because we're tightening onto small diameter poles, and we don't need as much belt to move with. The danger is if you have a very long belt with a small diameter pole, is that people could use that for climbing. Obviously it needs to be as a choked unit and used properly, which we'll do on the pole in just a little while. One key thing to remember when you're inspecting is to move the wear sleeve out of the way so you can expose all of the line to check through, and making sure that we check through. And again, the classic ones for looking at rope is we look for that bend and curve as we're checking through to make sure there's no damage to the interior fibres or the core of the rope. Again, moving the wear sleeve back out of the way as we continue our inspection through, making sure it's all nice and good, and inspecting every part of the rope as we go through, down to the adjuster and then back through to the other side and going away. Now, as one little point of interest, one of the small design features of the belt is we have a small little tag. This is to keep your belt tied away when you're climbing so you don't spike it. There's a small little clip which just clips into the captive bar of the carabiner there. Now, this is purely an option. If you feel that this becomes irritating or you don't want to climb with it, it can be removed. It's not a safety issue if this ring is removed completely. It's there as an additional feature which keeps your line tagged out of the way whilst climbing, but preferences does allow you to move it out of the way. One other aspect of preference is we have a small section of webbing here. This is just a tie-back webbing to stop areas from flapping around. This has purposely been done in white. This allows you, if you wish, to put your name or initials in place. That way you can mark that section because it's non-load bearing with a permanent marker. Any other part of the webbing, we don't encourage you to mark with a marker rather, because it can affect the polyamides. But as this is non-load bearing, that is the reason why it's there as a white piece of marker. While I'm here, we're looking at the adjustment, particularly with the small one, which is labelled SM for small. This belt has LG for large onto it, for the diameters of pole. The adjustment is quite easy. You can just bring the webbing back. I've actually got this tied in place, cinched in place. Pull the adjustment pack. That extends the webbing out fully to meet the choking circle of a pole. For this pole, will be a little bit narrower, and to adjust back in, we tighten it in. Now you will see that this webbing is not attached to the rubber in this section. That allows us to cinch it down very, very small to fit those 125 diameter poles. We do recommend that you loop the Velcro back in place afterwards. It's not a safety issue, but the belt does flap slightly when you're climbing, so that keeps it nice and snug together and makes it much easier to manoeuvre with it. When it comes to manoeuvring, and we'll show this again on the pole, the handles are there to make life easy. I just attach this to my belt very, very quickly. I have my adjuster is on the right hand side. I have the rope on the left hand side, and the device chokes in like so around the pole. This can be used in the opposite orientation as well. We have tested this with the gate of the snap hook upright and inverted at 140 kilos, and they both operate fine. That alleviates the need for a right hand and a left-handed belt. It is ambidextrous and can be used in either orientation. Just another point of issue is once it's on, it's on. You don't need to take this section out. We do have some people who are not very comfortable with 3-stage carabiners. They are obviously safer. Putting it on here, you can leave it on for the day. This is the only aspect that needs to be opened and closed, and that is a 2-stage opening action. This is the same for both belts. They're both ambidextrous, both designed exactly the same way. The difference being is that the red belt doesn't have this section of rubber which is unattached to allow it to choke down to the smaller circles or smaller diameter poles. Okay, and now when we come to set up the belt on the pole, as you can see, approach, we've proved that the pole is true with a hammer. Coming to it, I'm just taking the one side off again, leaving the belt in place. It's nice to the point where I'm not going to trip over it and move it, and I don't need to worry about ever undoing that 3-stage carabiner. We're just going to pass the belt around the pole like so, clip it in place, and all I'm going to do now is just check where the wear sleeve is. So I might want to move this up just a little bit. We want to try where possible to sit the rings within the wear sleeve, so the ring that can't be moved and the edge of the snap hook, keeping that here helps protect the lifespan of the rope for just a little bit longer. I'm looking round, I've got a pretty good position here to begin with. I'm looking at roughly about the kind of like 4 o'clock position and about the kind of 8 o'clock position for where the points come into. Now this can be adjusted slightly depending on your preference on where the hips sit on your D-ring. Some people like it to come into more of a taper point, other people like it slightly wider. Now we have dropped it in different orientations and different diameters. It will still bite, it will still collect even when the rings are in contact with each other, but it will drop slightly when we do that. What we found in testing is that the maximum distance when the belt is set at the kind of the 4 and 8 o'clock position is about 14 centimeters difference at the front of the belt. The rear of the belt, the greatest amount of displacement we've had is actually 5 centimeters, so it does stop very, very quickly, and this is one of the requirements for the development, to get a belt which stops nice and quickly, so in the event of a small a fall as someone's ascending, they're not going to displace down the pole a great distance. So I'm looking at my position here, feeling pretty comfortable. I can set this a little bit tighter or a little bit looser. To begin with there, I'm looking at it and thinking that's okay. I've got my double checks on, everything's attached, shock absorber is still fine. All the orientations there. I'll check this into place. What I can do is tuck this out of the way so it's not flapping and loose. And now I have a couple of options when I'm about to climb. I like to have a little bit of a test first, just get myself up to see if approaching. So spike in and do it, have a check, quickly flick up, make sure that everything is as it should be, lean back into the belt, making sure that I'm nice and comfortable. That seems to be pretty good. The pressure on my hips is quite nice, not dragging me in too much. So I think it's about ready to go. Now when it comes to climbing, we've got a couple of options. People have asked, can they climb the belt in the traditional manner by lifting the webbing up? Yes, you can. Can you hold the handles? Yes, you can. Can you slide your handles through? Yes, you can. I don't recommend that you put your wrist all the way through, because in the event of a fall, you can pull down and trap yourself, but it is perfectly acceptable to climb using your hands in this diameter, not passing the handle of the webbing past your thumb. So in that kind of manner, as you lift and climb up. It is a personal preference. Everyone's body is slightly different. Ergonomically, it might be slightly more comfortable for you. We put the orientation of the handles like this because it's in a more natural position rather than loading and holding in this orientation. We have had people in the past who've had injuries to their wrist struggle to climb a pole for long periods of time, particularly with holding the webbing in the old style choker belt. So this is the orientation that it's designed for, but it can be climbed like that, or if a preference, you can lift the webbing as well. Okay, in this instance, we're just going to pass this obstacle on the pole. I've put it installed just like it was some bit of furniture, a transformer or something similar. So as before, I come to the pole, I've set my climbing, my choking circle, set the diameters for the poles how I want them, got myself in place, got everything that I need, and I start spiking up the pole. Just make sure we move our work position lanyard out of the way. So we get to our obstacle, the first thing we need to do is put our secondary in place. So apply the lanyard. I'll come to the obstacle. All I need to do now is get my work positioning lanyard. So take my rope rat, pass it round, and as is with the polecat, this is cut resistant, which is why you can see this kind of beigey yellowy line. It is very, very abrasion resistant, very cut resistant, and it has good heat properties as well. At about 500 degrees it starts to char, which is a lot better than about 180 degrees for polyamide ropes. So all I've done now is I've put my rope rat in place, taken my weight onto there and slackened off the polecat, which allows me then to just unclip, let it dangle below me. I raise this up in between or underneath the rope rat so as they don't get tangled up. Pass this around, clip it in place, and when I'm there then I can just cinch it up, spike up slightly, take the slack out, or tension on, put some slack into the rope rat. That then allows me to remove it. Clip it back into position, make sure it's all nicely out of the way, and now, because I'm secured back in with the choking feature, I can take off my secondary and carry on making my way up the pole. So come down is literally just the reverse, and I come down to the obstacle, get myself into a nice comfortable position, put my secondary in place, cinch it to make sure it's nice and tight, and just park it over my shoulder so it's out of the way. Climb down, and put this slightly lower down because I'll struggle to reach it otherwise. Get my polecat as close to the obstacle as I can. Take my work positioner, place it around, take some weight onto it, slacken off the polecat, so now my weight is transferred onto the work positioning lanyard. Just undo the choking element, passing it down in between the lanyard, clipping it back in place and taking up some tension, and then I can release some of the tension from the work positioner, allow that to come off, whip it out of the way. Once I'm comfortable then I can retrieve my secondary and make my way back down the pole.